What's up, Summoners? King Blair here. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the current banner heroes, Bellona and Charlotte, and whether or not you should pull for them. So if you liked the video and want to see more, make sure you like, subscribe, and join the Discord server. The guild should be ready by next week, so signups will be going up this weekend for the following week. So get excited if that's something you're looking for. If you're challenger and above, you're active in the community, and you're level 65, get excited. The guild is finally happening. All right, enough about that. Let's get to what you probably came here for, Bellona and Charlotte. So as always, I like to start these videos with a summary, so you can start getting in the mindset and start seeing the skills when I start going in depth to each of the heroes. You can start looking at the skills and be like, this is something I really would like, and it's something that looks interesting to me. Or if you're like, yeah, I could see why I would want her, and then just skip, right? So hopefully this gives you a good idea. So first, let's start with the Bellona. So for Bellona, my recommendation is if you're an early to mid game player, she is a very, very solid pickup because she is an amazing PvE unit. So if you like PvE, you're early to mid game, you're struggling with Abyss, you're struggling with Raid, she's amazing for that. She works there, she works for A13, she works for Banshee, she works in a lot of places. I still use my Bellona to this day in a lot of PvE content, and I really, really like her. The later you are in the game, though, the less that you should consider pulling for Bellona because she doesn't really have that much of a PvP presence. Her PvP presence kind of goes away once you get past mid-game because there's so many other units that do her job in PvP but better. But PvE, very, very solid. So early to mid, highly, highly recommend you think about it if you're struggling with those locations. If you're late game, probably not, probably a skip for you unless you really just want her because she looks like a waifu, right? Then as far as Charlotte. So Charlotte, my recommendation is going to be probably a skip. I'm personally going to skip it, even though I think I did manage to pull one. But the reason why is it's not because she's bad. It's just because she's kind of weird and very hard to gear for early to late game players and doesn't really have a spot right now in the current meta. You can definitely make it work. She's definitely not a weak unit. She definitely has a lot going for her. She has AoE on every single skill. You can definitely use her for PvE, for Asimec Hunt, as well as some Abyss stages here and there, and even Raid. Some people actually like her for Raid because she has some really good AoEs. As far as PvP though, for RTA, she is a really good counter pick in certain scenarios where they pick a lot of units. But right now with Dizzy, SSB, and ML Craw running around everywhere, it really makes it hard for Charlotte to shine in PvP. So for me, Bellona, early to mid, considered taking. If you're late, depends up to you if you really, really want waifu. For Charlotte, most likely skip. She's very hard to gear. Can be really, really fun and can really shine in certain scenarios. But for the most part, you're not going to be like using her everywhere. She's not going to be game breaking, right? But let's look at the kits directly so you see why I'm telling you this stuff. What's their kits looking like? Why is Bellona such a good PvE unit, right? So first, the stats. So she actually doesn't have that much starting effect. She has pretty good starting effectiveness. My bad. She does have really good starting effectiveness. Her defensive stats are a little bit low, and her attack is actually a little bit low. So you might be wondering, how is she so good at PvP? Or PvE, not PvP. How is she so good at PvE? Well, the high effectiveness pairs really well with her kit. And they did give her an exclusive equipment that helps boost that even further, which allows you to have very high effectiveness, making it very easy for you to do things with Bellona. She also does have an attack imprint, so she can do more damage or the HP depending on your choice. So why is she so good for PvE? What makes her that good? So first, starting with the S1. Y'all, this S1 is solid. Attacks the enemy with a fan, deals proportionate to the max health. This is the biggest reason why she's so good for Raid. This is the reason why she's so good for Abyss. This is the reason she's even so good for things like Banshee. It's because she has a built-in Daydream Joker. And if you don't know what Daydream Joker does, it does damage based on the boss's max health. So if the boss, like in Abyss, has a ton of health, this skill will do tons of damage. Abyss 1 to 90, you can use Bellona on almost every single stage, and it makes it considerably easier, right? You can still use her later stages. I did use mine in a couple of stages, and I re-geared her for that. So definitely very, very solid S1. That also gives you focus that you'll see later on what that focus does. The S2 is kind of weird, but has started to grow on me just a little bit. So there's two exclusive equipments that I forgot what one of them does, but the other one is that it gives you an AoE. This one gives you an AoE strip on the S2, which is nice, not really crazy, but it's a nice addition. This skill, probably the worst part of her kit. It doesn't really do much. Besides just give you immunity for one turn. One turn is not that long, right? But what is nice is that this is going to be an AoE skill. allowing her to do more damage to the adds in A13, as well as Banshee, because you can hit the enemy's AoE, and this also gives you a stack of focus. So what will focus be doing? You will see in a second, right? She's an AoE machine, right? Then you have the S3, an AoE decreased defense. So the exclusive equipment that almost everyone goes for is going to be the decreased defense S3. This says 85%, but with her exclusive equipment, it goes up to 100%, right? So she has a 100% chance to AoE decrease defense with her S3. If you don't choose to do this, if you get the S3 off of the S1, then it will. I know it sounds confusing, but let's just go over it. So the S3, AoE decrease defense, that's pretty nice, right? The other EE lets you push back the enemy by 25%. So this, okay, pretty nice, right? Decrease defense AoE for 2 turns, that's really strong, right? But now this is the part where it starts getting kind of cool. When you have max stacks, you can use the S1 and it will trigger that S3 right away, allowing you to have insane AoE decrease defense potential. It is so amazing. And in early game PvP, it's actually really reliable since people don't have that much immunity. And even if you bring up a Asar, right, and you decide to use your Bellona instead for a damage dealer, it actually works pretty well, surprisingly, which I do like. That is something that I think is really cool. And she can definitely work in early to mid game PvP. So now, how does it all fit together? Why is she so good for PvE? So of course, the damage based on proportion to max health, that's insane. This one, having AoE is really nice for bosses in raid like Secretary Vera, where you need to have AoE skills or you lose. And then the decreased defense is so invaluable in taking down bosses quickly. And because she has a 100% chance to land this AoE, it is extremely powerful in a lot of stages, as well as comboing off with the S3, makes her a high damage, decreased defensing machine for bosses. So again, very solid for boss staking. Where will you use her? Banshee B13, or just Banshee period, because she's able to hit the add-ons with S2, S3, and the S1 combination. She gives herself immunity, so she does a little bit better against Banshee in certain stages. As a Mech 13, you have to kill the adds, and decreased defense is so reliable on Bellona, and if you give her the artifact that gives her extra decreased defense on the S1, you're decreased defense the boss all the time, right? So amazing for A13, because she can kill the adds, set up decreased defense on the adds, and do big damage to the boss. And then, of course, raid for Secretary Vera mostly, also for Devour Arachna, it makes it pretty easy. So again, really good PvE unit. PvP wise, you can make it work with like a Bazaar and then put her and like a Sedom and do kind of like a cool cleave setup. And I used to actually use her for my cleave setup when I was early game. I got to Challenger, and once enemies start getting a lot beefier and you realize there's other units that just do more than Bellona, that's when you'll probably phase out your Bellona for PvP, right? So, but she can still help you early game. Again, that's why she's so good for early game. But now, as far as Charlotte, y'all, I wanted this unit to be bad, to be good, so bad, because she actually has a really fun kit and she does work in certain scenarios. But there's just too many counters to her right now, and it really does hurt her. So base stat wise, the health for a knight is actually on the lower side. It's not insanely high. The attack though is pretty good. The speed is abysmal, but the crit rate is actually pretty high. But as we'll see, crit rate doesn't really matter that much for her, right? So as far as awakening attack, again, you can do more damage. So nothing crazy, right? Nothing crazy stat-wise, nothing really stands out except that she's kind of slow, right? But then you realize her passive and her skills. So one thing I really like about Charlotte is actually her passive. So we're actually going to start with the S2. When she's attacked, she gets Fighting Spirit, which will let you do more damage with your AoE, right? So that's pretty nice. But when you're also hit, you get an increased attack and increased defense. When attacked on the caster's turn, that's just if they counter you, which is not going to happen often. But it is, again, very nice that you're able to get self buffs. Increased defense and increased attack. That makes up for her lack of HP, because she's easily able to set up increased defense. So that, amazing. The fact that she can set up her own increased attack, amazing. I love self-sustaining units. I love self-buffing units. I think it's amazing. Now the S1. So you're coming in with this with most likely an attack buff, right? So you attack with dual swords with chance to decrease attack. It's 50%, which is nothing crazy, but it's only for one turn, so nothing insane. But when the caster is buffed, it's an AoE attack when used on your turn, and it gives you 20% combat readiness right afterwards. which is really, really good. I know it says a lot, and it's like a block of text, but essentially it's an AoE attack when she's buffed. So I don't know how we're gonna get the buffs, because they're not gonna be hitting me anytime soon, right? But essentially, just know that when it's your turn, since you have the self-buff capability, you're able to come in and get a guaranteed crit, and you don't trigger a dual attack. So again, a lot of really, really, really good stuff. It sucks that we can't see her with the buffs, but we already know she gets the buff this way. So this way, she always crits. You can build her high crit damage. And now onto the S3. It's basically the S1, but more damage, which is kind of cool. It does also apply unable to be healed, and it will always crit as well. So again, crit, 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 crit. She does not need an attack buffer. She does not need any crit. She does not need a lot of setup, which is what makes her so freaking unique. So where can you use her? So in Asimec Hunt 13, because all of her skills are AoE, and because she's going to be getting this so often, especially because she's so slow, you're able to get those buffs pretty often, or just pair her up with someone like a Ross that can give her a buff. And then you come in during her turn, AoE attack, kill the add-ons, because you can have her an insane critical hit damage, because she's going to crit, right? It will always result in a critical crit, which is amazing, right? So you will be able to kill those add-ons pretty easily. That's the only real place I really see her working, as well as like Secretary Vera for raid, because you need to do a lot of AoE damage, right? So not a lot of PvE, but still she does that job very, very well. And if you like Charlotte, you can definitely do that there. As far as PvP, there are some cases where you would really want a Charlotte, because the fact that she always AoEs allows you to reach units like Spectre Tenebria, or a Kali, or a lot of those shadow stealth units that you normally wouldn't be able to reach. So those are scenarios where you actually use her, but those are very rare scenarios, and most of the time, those units will be paired up with things like Emil Crow, Seaside Bellona, Dizzy, and all these different heroes that you don't want to be hitting repetitively. Particularly Seaside, that's probably the one that actually has shut her down the most, because if you're AoEing every time you attack, Seaside's gonna eat you alive, right? So that's the reason why you don't see her in PvP as often, but she can definitely work there. So overall, again, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, Bellona, amazing PvE, should definitely consider picking up your early to mid to late game. Pretty solid. Charlotte, most likely skip. Really cool kit. I really, really, really like her kit. Does work in some PvE scenarios where you need AoE every single turn. You can actually build your Charlotte max crit damage and just do insane amount of damage, because you're always critting, so you don't need any crit rate, right? That's why I said the crit rate is useless, right? Because she's always critting. But definitely has a lot of counters in PvP. And there's other units you can also use in those PvE scenarios. So because of that, she's kind of a pass unless you really, really like her. But that is all I have for you guys today. I hope to see y'all next time. Peace.